The whole point being that
Yeah.
Big Boss is the originator and that you can't have Solid Snake in the fiction without Big Boss. I mean, to Kazi's point, Mario's parents don't exist. There is no Mario's parents, so we can't even take into account. If you were going to say Mario's parents, technically it would be Miyamoto, but Miyamoto isn't a character, you know. Since Solid Snake is a direct in the fiction clone of Big Boss, you can't have one without the other. But the argument is that, you know, it's not Big Boss Solid. You know, it's the
Yeah.
game is about Snake. The character is into Snake. I like David Hayter's performance more than I like. Who does Big Boss? I can't remember. See, exactly.
David Hayter.
Okay, well then David Hayter.
and
well,
then eventually Kiefer Sutherland at the end.
Kiefer Sutherland is also Big Boss, or is he?
They brought him in just for Metal Gear Solid 5. But David Hayter's voice had been deteriorating, even in Metal Gear Solid 3 when he tries to sound a little bit different to sound like Big Boss.
Yeah.
He has this weird growl, and you can hear his put-on voice dropping out sometimes. And then when he does the PSP game, it's bad. He did this weird gurgle, and then he did Metal Gear Solid 4 being Old Snake, and it was this weird gurgle. So it was time for him to go, I think.
Yeah. But that since he did both the characters, that just goes to show that I at least like his performance as Snake more than I like it as Boss. I mean, I think Solid Snake kind of walks away with it, unless you, Matt, you've played more about it, Matt. So I don't know beyond, I guess, the surface what Big Boss's motivations, if there's anything within his character arc or his personal story that makes him stand out. But I think just, I don't know, action for action, scene for scene, I feel like Solid Snake goes through more shit than Big Boss does.
Well, the deal with Big Boss is that every cool thing that Solid Snake does, other than get old, Big Boss does as well. In Snake Eater, they brought back that cool action, sort of like you said, James Bond, but cooler. And then what happens in Snake Eater, spoilers for Snake Eater, is that he starts off as the cool James Bond guy, and as he goes through, he has to confront his mentor. And he realizes in the end, after he kills his mentor, while blindly following duty, he realizes that she was also following duty and was used by the powers above, just merely a pawn, and he was a pawn, and he killed the only thing that really mattered to him, the only person that really meant anything to him. And that is how he changes from blindly following the mission. Whereas Solid Snake always blindly follows the mission. He always stays alone. In Metal Gear Solid, he's just like this retired guy who's living out in the woods. He doesn't like people. He flirts and stuff, but I always found that he was a bit more of as a blank avatar, Solid Snake. The only time it really gets interesting is when he gets very, very old, and then he ends up being old, and that's about it. And he's kind of confronting it. I feel like Big Boss goes through a lot more. He has the arc that is a very, very believable arc, and I think it actually confronts the whole point of Solid Snake and Big Boss's character of like, why do they always just listen to everything that they're told? Yeah, I know they're soldiers, but all this crazy stuff is going on, and they never seem to have a thought. And Big Boss is the only one that, at the end of Snake Eater, he reluctantly shakes hands with the president. You can see everything going on in his mind. Some other bigwig bureaucrat comes over to try to shake his hand, doesn't shake it, walks away.
But doesn't Solid Snake also team up with Sniper Wolf? And like you're saying that Solid Snake always goes to the mission. I thought that in MGS1 that was the whole point, is that he finds the dude who, it's been a while since I played MGS1. He finds the political prisoner killed, and then that changes his thought on the mission. Like Sniper Wolf is an enemy, right? But he eventually teams up with her, correct?
With Sniper? No, he kills Sniper Wolf.
I know you have a fight with her, but like she's not an antagonist. I could be wrong. You know, I thought that at some point they see at some point eye to eye in the story, or maybe I'm thinking of another character. I know that Sniper Wolf you kill, or you. I mean,
they changed the mission because the person that you're after dies, but in the end, he's always following what the colonel tells him the whole time through. He's like, mission's changed. This is what you're doing, and he never really. He doesn't have an opinion on anything. He might ask questions all the time, like Metal Gear or nanomachines, but
don't undercut the character not having an opinion. I mean, he loves Meryl. He is a character. I don't think he's a blank slate, like you say, like
that's
Master
true,
Chief. I think he does have. He's just a victim of PS1 era storytelling. I think more or less when it comes to at least the first Metal Gear, and not like MGS2.
But he doesn't question like the morality.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, which Big Boss does. I don't want to get too deep down spoiler territory, but does Big Boss?
Big Boss completely goes from what Solid Snake is but he crosses over and
Yeah.
becomes a villain, and he does it very believably.
Yeah.
And he does it, he kind of wisens up to what Solid Snake never wisens up to. Although,
That's
you've got Metal Gear Solid
interesting.
2.
Is he honestly a villain, or is he just...
He becomes the villain. He
different-
becomes the villain of
Okay.
Metal Gear 1, the NES MSX game that,
Yeah.
you know, that Japanese computer.
But MGS is so convoluted at points that by the end, you're supposed to be kind of upset that Big Boss is at the end of his arc. You're supposed to be upset for him, or like,
Yeah.
So he is kind of a conflicted man. He's not just a clear cut villain. So
No,
that's
he's
why he has
yeah,
redeeming
exactly.
qualities.
He's a wounded character. He's an anti-hero in the way of, you're supposed to feel sympathetic for him. He is the good guy who ends up
kind of
basically
You play.
going on his own. He's like Kojima going off and making Death Stranding. He's like, I can't trust the Americans, the Chinese, the Russians. So he goes off, he makes Outer Heaven. He's like, fine, I'll do it myself. What does it matter?
You play as boss in 3, right? Snake Eater.
Hater is Big Boss and Snake Eater, yeah.
But yeah, you play as Big Boss. You don't play
You
as
do.
Solid Snake.
He plays Big Boss,
Okay,
but I mean, he's obviously he's a clone, right? So he
Here's
looks
the question
exactly
then,
like
since
Snake.
they're both the same. Yeah. So in which game, either MGS 1 and or MGS 4, if from character standpoints, I still think that Solid Snake's a better character, but I think the thing that might push it over one way or the other is who has the better stuff, like who does the cooler stuff. Because MGS 1, you know, you have the scene where Snake smokes and then he sees the lasers and all that, and like that's a cool thing. But conversely, in 3, you have Big Boss and his ability to like blend in with the camos. That's so. I guess kit wise, I mean, is there any real big difference? Because I think Snake does the cooler, more rugged, like I'm playing a little bit off the rules thing,
right?
Whereas Big Boss seems to be a better tech.
Sure.
But then again, like I haven't played them as much as you have.
Did you enjoy being in 3?
I think Big Boss is cooler. He felt a lot more like a real character. Solid Snake, you know, Matt, you bring up a good point with he smuggles the cigarettes in. They don't tell you, but basically he had to put them somewhere that nobody wants to go. And then, but with Big Boss, you want to talk about rugged. You want to talk about embodying the character. Kojima realized that if he puts it outside, he can actually incorporate all these other physics, the camouflage physics, the face paint, the camo, where you're laying. You're actually using your eyes a lot more in this game because the radar is a little, it's more like a submarine motion detector that goes around.
Well, no, just about the character. I just want to know, like, the kit themselves, like motion, maybe not even like the gameplay, but like who does cooler shit. You know, like that's what I mean. Like, not so much like that Snake has the cigarettes. I'm specifically talking about that scene where like he smokes the cigarette to see, you know, the lasers. Like that is a moment.
Who's more James Bond? Is that you're like who's the more badass?
Well, not
Bond?
even who's more James Bond, but who does the cooler things? Because I haven't played a lot of 3, whereas I've played a lot of 1 and 2. So I'm more biased towards Solid Snake because I've seen him do cooler things. But
okay,
Matt,
all right. So cool things Big
Boss
Boss does. Big Boss. Everything he does reduces his stamina, and the only way he can get it back up is by actually being this one-man mission. He doesn't just eat rations to survive. He has to crawl on his hands and knees and kill pythons and poisonous snakes and spiders, and then he needs to store him, and he needs to eat them, and you actually watch him eat it raw, and he tells you whether it's good or bad. And then you can wait for the food to get rotten, and he throws at the enemies, and they pick it up, and they puke.
So that's the thing that he can do.
That's the thing he can
So
do.
that's kind of badass, yeah.
Near the end, I mean,
directed,
3
so-
is basically a recreation in a way of 1. There's a motorcycle chase out the end with a girl and him on this motorcycle, except this time you're flying out. Kojima got to make his action movie where you're flying around on this bike. The whole enemy force is coming around at all angles. There's like a big Metal Gear thing coming after you. Snake's got any weapon you want. All of a sudden, the game just gives you infinite ammo because it'll be more fun this way. And you're just firing
Snake or Boss?
That's Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid 3.
Okay.
But Metal Gear Solid 1 had the same thing, where at the end of it,
Yeah.
you think the game's over, and all of a sudden you're on the bike and you're fighting Liquid Snake on a motorcycle. But they basically took Metal Gear Solid 1 and expanded it quite a lot more.
Well, it sounds like Big Boss is the winner for you.
Yeah,
He is for me.
he sounds more badass to me thus far. He seems like more enjoyable shooters.
Well, it's a 2-for-1 vote. It seems like Big Boss is the winner.
What about the crowd though?
What's the crowd thinking out there? El Azul, Carlos, Marisa.
Elsa's got to go.
Anybody have any
Blaze Edge.
opinions? This one's generally a harder one because they are literally, like you said, they're clones of each other. So
Yeah,
one's a clone of
For
the
me,
other.
Big Boss goes through an arc. You watch him do quite a bit more. Solid Snake is very cool, but his and he's not a blank slate, but his job is to be more blank and to be more complacent with it. And I think that Big Boss, his downfall, highlights that Solid Snake is very robotic. And maybe that's because he's a clone, but they don't ever illustrate it.
I think it's still undercutting Solid Snake to say that he's a blank. I think it's more just that it's PS1 era. I mean, if you want to say that Big Boss is a blank slate because you play as him in Metal Gear 1 and 2 for the NES, and he doesn't have any dialogue, he doesn't have any characterization because that's just Big Boss.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to the character to say just because they were in a game that it was made in PS1 versus PS2 era Snake Eater. I think Big Boss also has 2 games where he says literally nothing, and you wouldn't know that he's a character.
But actually, no. Here's the thing: in Metal Gear 1 and 2,
in Metal Gear, I think.
In Metal Gear 1 and 2, I think you do actually play as your Solid Snake, and Big Boss is your. I think he starts off as your boss, and then he becomes the villain. So even then, he has more of an interesting arc. So Snake has always been more of the player avatar.
I always thought you played as boss in 1 and 2. I
No,
could have been wrong though.
2 is called Metal Gear Solid Snake, which is very confusing when you're thinking of Metal Gear Solid.
Metal Gear Solid.
Snake. All right, can we move on from that one? Can we say Big Boss?
Yeah, I think unless everybody in the chat is saying one thing or the other. I mean, what does chat think? I think it's Big Boss, but
the chat is saying Dark Horse goes Solid Snake. Oh, Lachlan. All right.
Lachlan wants a Solid Snake. I mean, it's unless there's an overwhelming majority of Solid Snake in the chat. That's what I'm saying. Unless there's just because Lachlan says yeah.
Sometimes I think that Lachlan Dark Horse he likes to instigate things. He likes to go and he'll always vote for the underdog.
He just likes to get.
He's probably. I bet you in his family he would make the other people in the family fight. You hear what he said about you?
To the death. All right, let's say Big Boss.
Let's say Big Boss. Fantastic. Right. Okay,
is this
so
wrapping around now?
We're wrapping around. So that would put. Let's go back up to the top. We've got Mario versus. We could put Mario against Ganon. We could put Mario against Samus. I don't think we should put Mario right now against Joel from Last of Us. We could maybe.
You would just be throwing out Joel. I think you put Mario v Samus is a good link.
I'm up for that. How about you, Kazi?
Yeah, Mario versus Samus sounds pretty good.
Right. Mario versus.
That's actually really interesting, though.
Actually, hold on. Let me back that up. What was the other one? What was the option?
Ganon.
Because
Hero versus villain.
I feel like that's better because Samus really is like the biggest female lead, and Mario is like arguably the biggest male lead.
Put him head
in
to
all
head.
of games. Yeah. So I feel like I feel like they should at least be maybe the finalists.
Well, okay, so we're putting really strong ones against weak ones, in a way.
Well, I wouldn't want to throw out either Mario or Samus, but I could lose Mario to Ganon or vice versa.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, if you it's just
let's do Mario Ganon. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Mario v Ganon.
Mario v Ganon. Okay. All right. Now. This brings up the big question of this entire discussion: is these characters are going to be a lot different. It's going to show up a lot later, more so if we ever do have to end up comparing, say, Joel to like Samus. You know, Mario he doesn't say much. He likes dessert. He likes Peach. He will do anything it takes to get Peach back with a smile on his face. He's very blank. He's cute. He's evolved, but he doesn't ever really. I don't think he's ever really spoken other than say yip or yippee.
Here we go. That's a me. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's all very one-liners.
It is extremely intentional.
Yeah.
Extremely intentional. And then on the other hand, what about Samus?
Well, we're doing Ganon right now.
Yeah.
Oh, Ganon. Sorry, Ganon.
I think Ganon is a good. I think Ganon is a good counterpart for Mario because if we think about it in terms of their history as a character, Ganon. We're talking specifically Ganon, not Ganondorf, right? Two different things.
Are they the same person? Ganondorf? Aren't they?
Well, Ganondorf is like Ganondorf is the ocarina guy who descends from the Gerudos. Yeah. Ganon is the pig monster.
Oh.
Who is like the ultimate because Ganon even as the pig monster is different in like, you know, the N64 versions as he is in the Super Nintendo, just like how Mario is different in like Mario is missing in Super Mario versus Super Mario 64. So
even Mario RPG as well.
they all
Yeah.
But look,
They all
there's
do different
also a school of thought that says that Ganon and Ganondorf are the same, but Ganondorf
different
is just
phases.
his humanoid form.
Yeah, reincarnations. Or, yeah. That's what
I mean,
thought
because
as well.
I was
when
when we discussed it last time, we thought of the Gerudo. The Gerudo
the
man.
Gerudo, so Ganondorf, okay,
Yeah.
because Ganondorf is a more human character. That's the whole other story, yeah. Because Ganon is a giant pig guy. Is just
Yeah.
he's kind of
Yeah.
He's basically
Um,
just a game over screen in Zelda.
Yeah. We did a good comparison between Ganon and bloody flies. Sorry, but we did a good comparison between Ganon and Bowser. You know, obviously Mario's arch enemy. You know, we got the Mushroom Kingdom where there isn't lore, there isn't this depth. You know, you
it's
intentionally,
mainly the same thing.
yeah, intentionally like, you know, just characters. We don't really care about these crazy backstories or mystery. Ganon is surrounded by mystery. He's surrounded by, you know, so they come across with a completely different presence and, you know, I guess
I think
narrative archetypes. What do you prefer?
I think the end question comes down to the it's the undisputable fact that Mario is the face of video games. I think that is Mario. I just see being at the top of this list, unless it was like Pikachu, because there, as far as like visual recognition, even if you're not a gamer, there's a reason that like Mario and Pikachu are like the Tokyo Olympics. So there is that to take into account. But
so what does Ganon do wrong then? Why isn't Ganon the face? Is it because Ganon's a villain?
It's because Ganon's the villain. That's why they put Link over Ganon. You know, if they were to
still
do
say
it.
that Bowser's a bigger face than, because Mario's a bigger face than Link. You know?
I would say though, but if you were comparing like who's the more powerful character or anything like that, Ganondorf has more power. I mean, I think just Mario is really good at jumping. Ganondorf is like the only male in a whole culture of females, where he is like the the Triforce of power and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Mario's just an Italian plumber who quit his day job to save a princess. You know?
Mario could just jump over him and grab the Triforce axe or something and drop the bridge down. You don't know.
True. So, but I guess there's sentimental value versus actual character
it's
value.
Not about, it's not power. This isn't a question of power. Yeah. So yeah, I guess Mario's a brand. There is a reason why Mario is, as you're saying, a recognizable character.
I wish we had Crash Bandicoot on this list.
Crash Bandicoot. Oh, that would have been so good.
Or maybe Crash v Spyro. That's another list another time.
Yeah.
Oh, Crash would win no problem with just the commercials.
What do you think? Hilarious. What do you think Ganon's weakness is, Matt?
Ganon's weakness is
Salva.
he's been around quite a bit, but I don't think of him. He does have a lot of personality for a villain.
Yeah.
And I like his story of coming from this thieving tribe we learn a lot more about in Ocarina of Time. But he is fairly one-dimensional, though. I mean, he's the same old kind of like,
power hungry.
Yeah, power hungry. I'm going to be a villain.
Especially as a character that probably shouldn't be one-dimensional. He comes from this place of mystery. In saying that, though, he is kind of a mysterious way an entity of power, isn't he? An entity of evil.
Yeah, I mean, he's a political player, too. That's how he gets the whole entire thing in Ocarina, by making friends with Zelda's father, the king. So it's not like he's super... I mean, yeah, that's how
he's like a Jafar type.
Yeah, he's a mysterious man from the desert, but he also is... I mean, that's literally what he is. But he also has power, and he's a smart guy. That's how he gets... what's the word? I'm like, audience with the king, So he's not just that, but he is a little bit one-dimensional, like you said, in his motivations. He doesn't really have anything that's pushing him, at least in the beginning of the franchise, besides like, I want to rule the world because I'm a Gerudo guy. Like, that's kind of it. But then again, to that point, Mario also has little to no motivation.
True.
Like you said, Matt.
Is meant to. Yeah, I think, if he is meant to be the more meant to be a deep archetype of a character, a deeper design philosophy when it comes to his backstory, he should be meeting all these elements. There's still questions, there's still holes, or not necessarily loopholes, but areas where he lacks dimension. Well, Mario, on the other hand, is appropriately shallow. if that makes sense.
Well, that's where I bring it
Yeah.
up is because Ganondorf does have different storylines throughout different games too.
Yeah.
You know, his arc in Link to the Past is different from his arc in Ocarina, and he's not even in Majora's Mask really.
Yeah.
Well, kind of, but so therein lies the difference that he is fleshed out in different games.
Yeah, different games.
Just like how
He is-
Mario has different,
Yeah,
think
different
it's-
reincarnations.
it's-
Does he have to
it's-
find the average? Do you think? I think averaging it out.
I think Mario walks away with it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm coming back to is that Ganon is very interesting as a villain. He could, even for somebody that generally just wants to have power, he has an interesting backstory. He's got an interesting look. He always manages to intimidate Link. But in the end, is there any chance that he could unseat Mario, a character that's stood the test of time and yet has not become annoying in any way, still remains lovable without... Mario's cute without trying to be too cute. You know, he's not like Yarny. He's got... he's always seemed to be like this kind of everyman that's a bit cute that reaches far beyond. He's not in good shape, you know.
He's fat. His younger brother is in better shape than him,
Yeah.
and he's put it.
Yeah, and he's got to put up with that. He's shorter than... I mean, he's like Luigi got all the great genes. Mario got the recessive ones, but his sheer determination, to steal a term from Undertale, is that that's what puts him through every time. That he will come back from the death millions and millions of times with a smile on his face. Worse all, he gets tired. So I don't think that Ganon has any chance of beating Mario, even though Ganon is incredibly interesting. And
I mean,
Yeah.
in game, I think Ganon would wipe the floor with Mario.
Sure, but we're not talking about that.
As far as Mario goes, I mean, yeah, I think he takes the whole list just because he's a staple, like you said. It's when one company, especially a company like Nintendo, decides that they're going to go with one character for 25 plus years.
Yeah.
It's there's really no way to walk around that. I think
all-
Mario
all
walks
of us
away with that for
agree.
now.
yeah, it's Mario. Mario
Tiebreakers,
for
no
a,
nothing.
Mario for a
Mario.
mile.
From our end, what about chat? Does anyone have a reason?
Well, Crazy
think
Cuz is saying
Ganon
next show,
Ganondorf.
Yarny versus Mario.
Yanni versus Mario.
Yeah, of course. All right, so Mario moves on over Ganon.
Lockie, you're the Crazy Cos. You're the one that knows about Yanni. Shout outs to his Let's Play stream. Oh, I know he didn't stream it. He did a Let's Play of
High
Unraveled.
quality Let's Play. An entire playthrough of
high-quality
Yarny.
Let's Play. Yeah,
Unraveled,
on this
good time.
channel. Unraveled, yeah.
That's right.
Mario, yeah, Puppet Master reckons Mario, but yeah, he's got a Super Mario World image. You know, he might be a little bit biased, but
Puppet Master
I think
came to
Mario-
this channel because we were playing a Mario game. So yeah, I think he's quite biased. But that's the power of Mario. I think of a game
What's
that I
the-
want to play every year. It's a Mario game, and Mario's a likable character.
well, there's a reason why he's pictures Mario, not Ganon.
There you go. All right,
So-
so we've got Samus, Joel, Leisure Suit Larry, Cloud, Sephiroth, and Big Boss. I wouldn't mind having Cloud and Sephiroth could be an interesting battle, and then we could do
Big Boss and Joel might be interesting as well.
Big Boss and yeah,
Kind of grizzled.
and then a
Grizzled
Samus and
people
Leisure
eye?
Suit Larry. I think that works for me.
Yeah, there's-
Samus for his Leisure Suit Larry. You want to do that right now?
Yeah,
You want to
let's
do that right now, Samus?
the
Why?
best match.
She's just a girl who has a helmet on.
She was the poster girl for strong female leads, whereas Leisure Suit Larry's entire motivation is
Yeah.
to have sex for the first time, and every step of the way, a woman makes him look like a fool. I think womanizer Leisure Suit Larry versus woman warrior.
So you're
Samus
saying
Aran.
that in Leisure Suit Larry there are countless examples of women empowerment, but Metroid only has one.
Well,
That what you're
yeah, I
saying?
mean, in a way, but the women are also being sexualized at the same time. I
But
think
they're-
the
but they're
biggest thing
fighting
for
back.
Samus. I think the biggest thing for Samus is that you didn't know that she was a woman until the end of the game,
Yeah.
and that everybody was under the assumption it was just another male character with the same exact thing. But to that point, if we're actually going to talk about who's more powerful, I mean,
No.
or who's
Effective character.
Samus? I mean, Samus is just she can change out all of her suits. She looks good in different suits. She is a space bounty hunter who has fought all sorts of aliens. Leisure Suit Larry is an Earthling who has fought the inability to get laid in his 50s.
Well, I mean, but he's not in a sci-fi game.
But in the context, yeah, but in the context,
And he wears
of
different
the game
suits.
world.
And he
I
looks
think-
great.
Leisure Suit Larry can barely get. Leisure Suit Larry doesn't even know how to order new toilet paper. It's a puzzle.
And that adds to his character. The negatives add to his character. Samus is a badass. Larry's meant to not be a badass. He's meant to be
sure.
Yeah.
You know, for sure.
Who does a better job at being their particular archetype? Is Samus?
Samus, because Samus saves the world in the first game. Larry doesn't get laid 6. That's what I'm saying. I guess as an effective.
He's meant to. As an archetype for their particular character. So Samus is meant to be a badass bounty hunter. Larry's meant to be a badass, not badass, if that makes sense. Anti-badass.
Leisure Suit Larry can die from an STD 45 minutes into his game.
That's a good thing.
Very realistic.
Good character building.
I mean,
good lesson.
I mean, who's a more effective character? Honestly, Samus. I think in this day and age, Leisure Suit Larry is. I like him as a character, but I think he is a womanizer, and everything he stands for is disgusting in this day and age. Honestly, but I like him as a character. I just think that he was made in a very different time when you can get away with things. Yeah, he is a goofball for sure. But he honestly can't fight his way out of a paper bag, which I get is his character. But then when you're put against somebody as powerful as Samus, it's kind of like, you know,
it has nothing to do with power. If the game is about being weak and a character shows the vulnerability, that's what's important. I mean, Leisure Suit Larry is the pathetic guy. How about this? You think of the stereotypical person playing a PC video game in that era, they might very well identify with Leisure Suit Larry and think, yeah, that's how I feel. I can't get a girlfriend.
Maybe it's not about
another example. Look at superheroes. Who do you connect more with? Superman, who stands up. Obviously, we're not looking at video games, but Superman, you know, who stands up as like this big, powerful human. You know, like this figure, or Logan out of the Logan movie, who
or Wonder Woman
save the world. Or Wonder Woman, but yeah, like who do you connect more?
They're
with?
both boring.
Who do you connect more with? The Flash, early Barry Allen, who doesn't know how to do anything, but his whole entire point is to do that thing. That's what I'm saying. I guess it's not about power. Yeah. If Leisure Suit Larry's whole entire idea is to get laid, and it takes him 7 games, and he still doesn't do it, but Samus Aran can save the world every single.
The whole point is he doesn't. Yeah, I guess.
But the character's motivation is still to have sex, and he can't accomplish that, whereas Samus is to fight aliens, and she consistently accomplishes that. So as an effective character within their story, I guess as far as
defective can be a good character. A defective character can be a good character.
Well, then there's also a reason that Leisure Suit Larry is dead, and he died in '98, and then was revived, and then so there's what was more effective then versus what's more effective now. If they said Leisure Suit Larry. Because we bring up Mario's importance as far as branding. They tried to do Leisure Suit Larry 1 remastered, and it didn't sell that well, and he was forgotten. But, we talk about Metroid Prime 4 getting an announcement, and the whole entire world goes crazy. So I think as far as a brand power, Samus has it. I do agree, though, that Leisure Suit Larry does have the effectiveness of being
I mean, Samus is more
popular. If there's a message behind these characters, it would be Samus.
But because those games, I mean, she's been in far less games, and they've all been fantastic, like some of the tops in the genre. I mean, there's crap here and there, but the first 2 Game Boy version that people are still remaking, Nintendo's remaking, you got fans remaking it, Metroid Prime trilogy, those are really important games. Whereas Leisure Suit Larry was 7 basically identical games that rode into the ground, and people were sick of it. That's why they didn't want to see it anymore.
Well, there's the 6, and then there was 6 on PC, and then they tried to come into the modern age with Magna Cum Laude for Xbox and PS2 and PC,
and failed.
And that's but then they also that's kind of where I have an issue with Leisure Suit Larry being effective as like a goofball, because in Magna Cum Laude specifically, they bastardized the character. They kind of took away the fun-lovingness of the original character, where you could say that he was kind of like naive, and that was the reason. And they made him into just an ugly character. I like Leisure Suit Larry from 1 to about 5, and then 6 in Magna Cum Laude is when he actually gets disgusting as a character. Whereas it becomes less more effective and more offensive. I guess it depends on.
In fact, he would get old as well. Like the whole gag is him. He is the gag.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you improve the resolution of your game. That particular game is probably going to get stale. Samus, you can still keep adding depth to her. I think they've made a few mistakes with a couple of.
Well, and it's also a matter of Samus being a kind of a blank slate character, and Leisure Suit Larry being the flip side of that. Leisure Suit
Yeah.
Larry does nothing but talk, and Samus does nothing but
Yeah.
pretty much be silent,
But
except for
there's-
in Other M, where she's garbage all the way through.
Yeah, Other M. That's the one I was thinking about. So yeah,
Other
I
M's
think
trash.
I think
It's
I think
not
I'd have to go Samus. I'll have to go Samus because Leisure Suit. Larry's good for his game, but you can't keep going with Larry.
I mean,
He's
Samus
old,
also
he
has a
goes
stinker
stale.
too. You know.
Yeah, they both have stinkers, but I feel like if you're wanting to keep, developing, on a video game series, you could keep going with Samus. And saying that though, if there's a game that's made in a way that there'll only be one of its kind,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, wrapped up narrative, that's fine. But I think Samus just has a little bit more power and presence, and
I think
as you were
Leisure
saying,
Suit is a good character. I just think
relevance,
that
yeah.
there's no one like Samus at that time or to now. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of really, really powerful women as leads in games, but I think that when you compare even Leisure Suit Larry and that genre, I would say like Guybrush Threepwood was a better version of the dopey kind of dude within that whole genre. Whereas in the action adventure genre, you don't have another character that's quite like Samus, or at least one that you can name. Think of like a female bounty hunter besides the Ghost from StarCraft. Like there isn't many that you can think of. So I think the originality there too. Well, Shepard, Shepard. Okay, so that's
Renegade
that's
Shepard.
one.
Should it matter that of Samus's gender though? We go down the feminist territory. I personally, I think it was a kind of a cool, interesting, almost a fake out when her gender was revealed.
Yeah, that's like the big surprise. That was the whole idea.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cool. I personally think, especially Samus obviously is more relative today as well.
Yeah,
in today's
unless
context.
chat is blowing up with the Leisure Suit Larry.
Yeah.
All right, from the chat we've got Crazy Cause, and this is how he's weighing in. Says never played Metroid, but does like Leisure Suit Larry. Also says that Leisure Suit Larry expanded beyond that and has a casino game, made it all the way to the N gauge.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, if you remember that.
Samus didn't make it to the N gauge. The phone gauge.
All right, I think that Leisure Suit Larry was a wonderful Cinderella story that people wanted to automatically dismiss, but he had a big cultural impact himself. And he was a loser that tried to get laid. He was pushed forward erotic games into the mainstream.
He did a lot of stuff.
There's
a lot of point-and-click adventure.
He's got a pretty big brand recognition for somebody that really shouldn't. In a way, he's like Mario. He's this hero that doesn't look like a hero, but he is a little more realistic.
Is he really a hero? But
and even though he sort of sexualizes these women, like you said, Matt, the women shut him down. So it's nice. He doesn't operate in some fantasy world. This is all real, and he tries, and he still can't ever get it. That's the right joke.
You do get laid in Leisure Suit Larry 1, so my argument's out the window.
Well, I guess they jumped the shark with that one. But Samus, overall, the cultural impact. I mean, the big reveal of her gender at the end of it was a big surprise. Although when you think of how much they ripped off Alien, I don't think making the hero a female was really that big of a surprise. It was still a nice step. I think that had more to do with Nintendo just being like, we like that American movie, let's do that.
Yeah, it was a cool, fun, fake out. It wasn't like forceful diversity. It was just, dude, that's sick,
Yeah.
So I personally, I think is a smaller margin than you'd expect, between, these two completely different characters. But I think Samus just, I don't know, might have just a little lead.
I think it's closer than I think. And it's really easy, I think, to look at the surface and go, well, Metroid games are better and they're more respected and people want to play them more.
Yeah,
she's basically.
Well, I'm not talking about the game. I'm not talking about the game,
right? But I think that has a lot to do with it. When I think of it, when I look at it, I go, "Oh yeah, Metroid. It's got to be Metroid." But then when I think about them, it's Samus. But okay, it does. They don't always have to be the most interesting character.
If you strip away Samus's power, then she is just a bounty hunter without a suit.
And she's a wimpy character, isn't she?
And then Leisure Suit Larry has no. Leisure Suit Larry has no sort of power or persuasion. Samus's ability to kick ass is the thing that makes her better than Leisure Suit Larry, in my opinion. Not a matter of her power over Leisure Suit Larry. It's just that her character is the suit, almost.
Right.
Like you're saying.
But is it because she's physically more powerful? just being physically more powerful doesn't necessarily make you.
I mean, it needs to be.
I don't know. It's about what she has.
Superman, in my
trait.
opinion, is a boring character. So what is the attribute that pushes her across the line?
I'm just saying, if you take away her suit or her mention of power, then you just have a chick with blonde hair who doesn't have anything. She's standing on a planet. She doesn't have her arm cannon. She can't freeze. She can't scan things for her surroundings. She can't use her intelligence in that way. So that's what I'm saying. Like her abilities are directly tied within her character because she doesn't use a bunch of dialogue. Leisure Suit Larry doesn't need a space suit to get laid. He's much more about words.
Leisure Suit Larry doesn't have any physical gifts at all. He has to purely use his mind, which I think is a great avatar for playing a game where the only way you can interact with the game is by using basically your mind and your wits about you. So I think I'm leaning towards Samus in it just for the staying power, but I think it's not as one-sided as I thought it was before. Larry's a really interesting character.
It's a completely different character.
Actually, they're very appropriate for their game universe.
Yeah.
Especially when the generation of when Samus came out for the action style of game. You can't really have too much depth with her. They did explore her a little bit in comics, and she ended up having like weird bird people that raised her and stuff.
It's weird stuff. I don't
she's a character that doesn't really need to be that interesting as well. I mean, Larry is in a game that is a narrative game. Like Matt says, he talks a lot. He needs to have a big personality. Whereas Samus is like a Master Chief. She needs to be a blank avatar. She was that way by necessity because in the NES at the time was an action game. They weren't going to be writing any dialogue or anything for. But they kept that going, and it worked as more of an immersive. I guess they figured that in Prime as well. It's first person. We're going to keep it immersive. Not going to have huge personality. She's not cracking jokes and one-liners. And it's appropriate to that environment. You want to feel cold and alone and claustrophobic. Samus is not really your friend in that way. So I think she fits that universe pretty well. But Larry's still he's so unique. And even though he's not a likable character at all,
I guess we do need to reach some sort of consensus about what qualifies, what we can use as a positive or negative. Because if we throw out the abilities that Samus has, where we were using the abilities that Big Boss has over, like his ability to eat snakes and to use camouflage, we use that as an up over Snake. So, like that is still something that's in game.
Contextually appropriate for his game world.
Yeah.
Who is contextually more appropriate for the game world?
Yes.
I'm starting to think that you could change Samus. You could make Samus the Master Chief. Same personality as the Master Chief.
But if you lose Samus, you lose a lot of what Metroid is about. True.
You do lose. But if you replaced Larry with Wario, I don't know. Wario's actually a decent replacement. But if you replaced
Nathan Drake, if you put Nathan Drake in Leisure Suit Larry, that game's over in 3 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that too. But I think you lose the heart. I think that you can take Leisure Suit Larry's dialogue and put it on a man named Leisure Suit Harry, who's completely different. And the game maintains its focus as a joke about, a 40-year-old virgin who can't get laid. But if you take Samus and replace it with Manmus, it changes what the whole entire franchise kind of stands for. Then it just becomes, another well-done 8-bit thing. You have the different stuff within the game, but if we're talking about the character, I think she adds more to the whole reveal. I think that's what made there be a Metroid 2. If you just make it kind of like a Master Chief character, it's whatever, That's what I think, at least. I think Leisure Suit Larry can be replaced with another character who looks similar, and I think if you replace Samus with a dude or something, it diminishes it. And I'm not just saying that just Samus being a chick is the only thing that gives her the leg up.
Yeah, what if you replace Samus with a different girl?
I mean, you could do that.
You could even replace Samus with a black transgender.
But the point is that Samus, Samus as a character, she has two things about her that make her a character and not just a block. That she is a woman and that she has the suit that can change out powers. Like that's for the whole game.
I don't think a character's gender should make them a better character. I think it's what they do with that gender. I guess she does. It's a bit of a fake out, and I guess it I guess it's a little bit of a message behind it, but I don't know. I think Samus personally is more replaceable with a characteristics which is a blank. I think Samus being a blank character. That's what I should say. You could have Samus, but you could have a Samus that talks a little bit more, has a little bit more perspective on things.
Yeah,
I think you could have a more talkative Samus.
All right.
but
Look, I think that
Do you think?
I think Leisure Suit Larry is
couldn't
a
have a
more
less
interesting
talkative
character.
Larry?
He's a more interesting character, but
Yeah.
over 7 games or 8 games, doesn't grow at all.
No.
He's the
It's-
same
it
old
goes
joke,
stale.
and I think that his gimmick runs stale. And even though he's far more interesting and deep, and he actually suits what he's doing better. And I think that if you put in a character who looked different, the game wouldn't work. I mean, you could call him Harry,
Yeah.
but like you said, Matt, he's a 40. His character is that he's a 40-year-old virgin who has no
Yeah.
hope,
Yeah.
and he's fighting against all
But
odds.
that's his character. It's not his name. It's
Yeah.
who he
Whereas
is. It's
Samus,
his
it was a really
characteristics,
fun
yeah.
reveal that she was a woman, and the whole message was that don't judge by the appearance. I mean, the suit
Yeah.
made her
Yeah.
look muscular, it made her look masculine, and
Yeah.
everybody assumed it was a man. And I think that was a big moment, and that in a way that was a bit of a gimmick as well, but it did give her the staying power, and I think it was an important part in games when at a time, I mean, there was probably far less women playing games back then, and that might have been something that tipped the scale.
Yeah.
yeah, I
that's
guess
true.
at the end of the day, the two sentence of this is: do you want to reward the character whose entire motivation was getting laid and did that by disrespecting women, or the most powerful female lead in video games of all time? That's, I guess, in the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
It's in 2018. I'm not going to professionally say that Leisure Suit Larry is a better character, because that is just not. It's not, maybe not PC to me, but like that stands for something a little bit different. Like
Yeah.
Leisure Suit Larry is great in the 90s and should stay there. Like, and they tried to bring him into the modern age, and with, like you said, Magna Cum Laude, and then I think they did another one on PC a little bit later, and then he wasn't effective anymore because
Okay,
his
let's
world
go
was
Samus
therefore.
staying power winner.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Samus,
that's
alright.
just the end of it.
Do you guys think we should take the PC vote in the audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's
'Cause
Samus has a
more
game
relevant.
coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leisure Suit
Yeah,
Larry
true.
does
I
not.
mean, for a reason. Yeah, he doesn't have the staying power, and as you said, he belongs back in the 90s. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna have to say Samus.
Yeah, we used brand on
Yeah.
Mario for something, and so
Yeah, and she's a brand. But
Yeah.
they're both a brand, I guess. it's so hard.
that when you come to
Samus-
Nintendo
Samus.
has like 6 characters,
Yeah.
and they like to. I don't know. If this was Captain Falcon versus Samus, I might have some different opinions, but like
Ooh.
That'll have to be for next time. All right, let's
Yep.
go. So Samus won that one. Larry, you had a great run. You made it farther than anyone ever thought you did, and that, in
salute,
a
Larry.
sense, is a great example of his character.
I don't hate Larry. I have all of his
Holiness.
games sitting
We
on the
love you.
shelf.
You would. All right, so we can do Cloud versus Sephiroth, or we can do Joel from Last of Us versus the Big Boss.
Well, I think that one's interesting. So I think we'll jump to probably the. Do you think jump to the Cloud one first?
Sure.
Do
Cloud.
you want
That's pretty
to do Cloud v Sephiroth, or you want to switch it and do like Cloud v Joel? Wait, what would the other flip side be then?
Well, I think we should do Cloud v Sephiroth. Keep them similar as possible until the winners of them force the really interesting conclusions.
They're saying that Sephiroth and Joel are kind of similar, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they
Wait,
both
do we have
start,
do we have 2 villains and 2 heroes, or no?
Big Boss
No.
is I mean, all 3 of them in a way
Are
are
like kind of shitty
are both.
anti-heroes?
they're all anti-heroes.
Yeah.
We should just have them get into a dirty backstabbing 4-way battle. But we won't.
Cloud v Sephiroth? Let's do that, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so Cloud v Sephiroth.
Spoilers for Final Fantasy VII.
They're coming. All right, we got Cloud. Cloud starts off as a mercenary. Has no interest in saving the world, doesn't care about environmentalism, just wants to make some money. Find out that he never really made it to be what he wanted to be. He looks up to Sephiroth. As the game goes on, Cloud breaks down. He doesn't even know who he is anymore. His mind fractures. He spends a part of the game in a wheelchair. He realizes that his memories aren't real. Now, Sephiroth he's basically Darth Vader. He was the star soldier for the good side.
Yeah.
and then he fell into madness. He realizes that he also is a part of this sort of messed up stuff, doesn't know who he is. He's trying to find out who he is. He's trying to become one with the world. In a way, he's trying to save it, but the way he's doing it is probably going to ruin everything. Now, I think my first impressions on it are that Sephiroth, I think, is a way cooler character, a character that I loved as a kid. I loved Darth Vader. I love Sephiroth. He's got the cool factor. He was used to have the great moment. We said spoilers. I don't know. I can't even say it aloud when he does the big character death in Final Fantasy VII. But Cloud
Cloud can't even protect it. He wasn't even there. Too late.
I think Cloud goes through more of an arc, whereas Sephiroth, see a bit of his backstory go through. All right, all I can put into this right now is that I think Sephiroth is a lot cooler, but Cloud has a lot more going on. Where do you guys stand on this?
I think that Sephiroth is cooler, and I think we also have the opportunity to look at Cloud and Sephiroth outside of their own games, because Cloud is in like Smash, Sephiroth is in Kingdom Hearts. We can examine their character outside of their own world. I think from a visual perspective, Sephiroth is cooler. Mm-hmm. But Cloud, I think, really pushed forward. Well, Cloud's hair is an issue to me because everybody has spiky blonde hair, and I think I think
looks really weird in the remake, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think Cloud is a little bit more archetypal. I think Sephiroth does different things. And Sephiroth is the catalyst for one of the most memorable character deaths of all time, like Matt said. Cloud, has the sad face there, but Sephiroth does a lot of crazy things, and he's intimidating in other games, like in Kingdom Hearts. He's like one of the last bosses. He's still an intimidating villain across the whole entire Square Enix universe, not just within his thing.
That's quite interesting, actually. They both have a lot of staying power. They're both
Cloud's in Super Smash, and he's powerful as hell in there too. So,
this one I think is really tough because they both have very similar arcs. I think what makes them most interesting is the same thing. They're both these fractured people that thought that they were. Time.
Well, one of you has to pick first. All right,
Kazi, go for it. Go.
Oh, I don't know who started talking first. Do you think Cloud could have become Sephiroth without Sephiroth? Would he have gone down the same mark, potentially?
Well...
No. Are they completely different?
The only reason he does anything is because of Sephiroth, though. I mean, Sephiroth is... Okay. I mean, he's the villain, and Cloud can only be a hero because there's a villain.
It's kind of like the same argument with Big Boss, is that it's you can't have Cloud without Sephiroth, because Cloud's character is so intrinsically tied. Like Matt said, before you have Sephiroth, Cloud is just kind of trying to make a buck,
That's a stronger tie, though. There's a stronger tie because the reason why, Snake and Big Boss are, connected Solid Snake and Big Boss is because, genetically, he's actually related. But in the other in Final Fantasy VII, it's not because of, any hereditary or because they're related in any shape, way, or form. It's actually because of the characters themselves. They're a strong duo. They're a strong duo, aren't they? Like if you think of them as Agatha.
I think, generally speaking, and I might not have any metric as to way to validate this, but I think that Sephiroth embodies the evil more than Cloud. Effectively speaking, more than Cloud embodies good. I think that Sephiroth is and will always be an evil character, and he almost has that seductive evilness to him.
Yeah.
Whereas Cloud is very pro-tag. Cloud is very maybe that he's not shallow.
Do you think he's conveniently evil though, Sephiroth?
Yeah, he's a little convenient. That's the better answer. Not that he's shallow, but he works within his story and not to his own character.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
But
Cloud is a lot more realistic. He's a lot more grounded. It's easier to identify with him, and he's the player's character, so he's very effective in that role. Another thing I really like about Cloud is that he's this hero. He's so strong. He's badass. He's your... It's not like one of those RPGs where your main character is like the healer and someone else is doing damage. He's doing everything better than anybody. And then halfway through the game, kind of like in 6, where the evil villain wins, and you're like, oh, what, I lost? Cloud is broken. Yeah. He's getting pushed around in a wheelchair. He's like a feeble man. He is totally cracked. He can't do anything, and he has to have this sort of Rocky montage comeback. He doesn't know who he is. Everything the lie he was perpetuating is broken in front of him. And I think that's a really interesting thing to do with a protagonist, whereas Sephiroth is so attractive as a bad guy. He's the cool heel, we call them in wrestling. He's the Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But in a way, he, like you said, it's very convenient that Sephiroth wants to kill everything. Yeah, he's mad about everything that happened to him, but I think Cloud reacts to it a lot more realistically. But
Cloud has a cooler arc, I think.
They're very, very similar arcs, but Cloud reacts realistically. But in their roles, Cloud, I think, does such a great job of taking the player on a ride, where the Sephiroth is the great thing that he's chasing, but if there's any downfall to Sephiroth's character, is that it's too convenient.
Yeah. I think visually speaking, I like Sephiroth a little bit more. Like, just from a visual standpoint, that's
the
what I meant.
Sword, the hair, that shot of him when you see that he burnt his village, and it's all in flames, and it cuts across, and we'd never seen any visual like that in a game before, and it was not only technically impressive, but artistically impressive as well.
Hell yeah.
He might be one of the most badass characters, full stop, of gaming. But by the sounds of things, he's convenient. He doesn't go down his own. He's not in pursuit of a character.
I vote Sephiroth.
You vote Sephiroth. I'm going to go Cloud because I think he stays true to his character. He doesn't.
Oh man,
he doesn't chuck a Master Chief and change based on the plot. He doesn't change characteristics based on his plot. It's not. I don't like.
I like
characterization.
Sephiroth a lot more. As a character, I find him cooler. Definitely.
I would argue, Matt, that you have a lot of Final Fantasy knowledge. So if there was somebody to break this tie, I think I'm happy
Matt,
with it being
it's up to you. Oh, me too. Totally agree.
Sephiroth is the cooler character, and even though Sephiroth has a better look and a better weapon, and he has better moments, and he delivered the big moment, I think Cloud's arc,
the big Cloud,
the broken hero, more broken than we'd ever seen before. I mean, this is a game that gives you Aeris, takes her away. It gives you Cloud, takes him away. You don't even know if he's going to come back. He's a vegetable. And
I more recognized. Yeah.
I argue that Cloud does have more staying power, at least in as far as like the wide breadth of games, just because he's been in fighting games like Smash Bros. He's shown as a character model. You can look at Final Fantasy VII's character model and then look at something like Kingdom Hearts or something like Super Smash, and he looks just as cool now that he did then. Sephiroth, he's still just trench coat boy.
Yeah.
He's more one note in that. I mean, there's been a little bit of a backlash against him. I think if people got old, they like to call him emo boy, or he's like liking the color black because you think it's cool, but he is so damn cool. You can't.
He is.
Can't get away from that.
But Cloud does look cool too. I just think that as an embodiment of like evil and good, Sephiroth does better. But I think Cloud's still a good looking character for sure.
Oh, as much as I love Sephiroth, I think I have to give it to Cloud for the realistic the realistic actions.
Cloud takes it, man.
Yeah.
That's a cool tiebreaker. I like that.
This is a tournament of heroes. The villain's getting the hard shaft.
Oh.
Okay. And Carlos voted for Cloud. Ted Belcher says Cloud can respec, and that Sephiroth can't be a rogue. Cloud could steal.
Cloud won in both chat and
Hooligan Monsoon. Cloud is more recognized. Well. Okay.
So Joel versus Big Boss?
Joel versus Big Boss. And that'll be the end of this one, and then we'll go down to the final four next time we talk about
Anti-hero versus anti-villain.
Joel's one of the best characters written for games. They're quite similar. Big Boss takes a long time to get where he's going. They do such a good job with Big Boss in having him be starting him off as a James Bond character, and then becoming the hero, and then watching that transition into the anti-hero. But, I mean, has there ever been a better written character than Joel, and a better presentation of a character than Joel?
Here's the thing, too, is that I think Joel arguably goes through just as much, if not more, as far as character, his motivation kind of... It's hard to talk without spoiling Last of Us, and I'm not trying to spoil Last of Us when Last of Us 2 is so close to being out. But his decisions and where he thinks he's going to go versus when he finds out some things to be true and then he changes his mind. Like, I feel like the steps of Joel's inter challenges, he goes through those just as much and just as varied that Big Boss does, but in one game. Yeah. You know, I think that Big Boss takes 3 to 4 games and and it's a bigger story too, so that's appropriate. But I think Joel just ounce for ounce and for scene puts more emotion on the screen, and he's just so damn relatable, especially if you are a father or somebody nearing that age. It is very, very, his story is something that is relatable and not just seen as fantasy, whereas Big Boss can be far enough off where it's not as relatable. I think the relativity of Joel really does a lot for his character.
Yeah.
But Big Boss is way more badass, in my opinion.
Joel elevates The Last of Us from its game. I think The Last of Us is like a Christopher Nolan movie. You play it, you think 10 out of 10. This is amazing. Yep. I've never done anything. And then you think about it and you go, wait a second. The gameplay kind of sucks. There's not really a lot of replayability. This is just kind of like a bad cover shooter with annoying crafting. And then you come around and again you go like, no, it was so good at what it did that we'll give it like an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10.
That's such a good example. Oh my god.
So and I think that Joel elevated that game from being somewhat interesting. I mean, when we heard they were doing like zombies again, we're like, what? More zombies? Yeah. They made it interesting. So much of that was Joel from the beginning to his big reveal when the game really starts, to what he turns into, to the mystery, to really wanting him to become a better man, and to what he does at the end. There hasn't been anything like that in games before. Big Boss had a lot of games to come around with what Kojima did, and he had a lot of time to retcon him because this wasn't really planned out. He wanted Metal Gear Solid 2 to be his last game. Konami started making Metal Gear Solid 3. Kojima was like, oh, you're going to ruin it. I'll hop in. He wanted to stop, did 4, then he does 5. Big Boss is even a character in 5. Kiefer Sutherland's there. He says like 6 lines. Didn't even need him.
Yeah.
I don't. Big Boss is great. And I already talked about how much I liked him in the last one versus Solid Snake. He's good enough to beat Solid Snake, but I don't think he's going to take down the real Big Boss, and that's Joel.
My thing for Last of Us is when you're talking about Matt, you play it the first time, you're like, it's a masterpiece, and then you play it the second time, or you think about the second time, you're like, wow, it's actually not that good. I'm one of those people that thinks The Last of Us 1 is one of the most overrated games of all time. I think it is one of the best stories ever told, but a perfect example about how something doesn't necessarily need to be a game. A game draws you into the characters, and that gives you a lot, but at the same time, it is just picking up ladders and helping Ellie go across. So Joel, in that way, is a perfect example of a character with no power being the most powerful thing. You have someone like Big Boss who is trained, who is... he is death incarnate when he wants to be. But arguably, what's more interesting or what is more dangerous? A man with nothing to lose that has now found one thing that he does not want to lose, Joel, or Big Boss, who has this very deep backstory, deep training. It's the raw emotion of Joel and just his very, very singular motivation, I think, is way easy to relate with. And I think that Big Boss has a lot of stuff that goes from in gameplay. He's cool to play as. Joel is just, bang, bang with the gun, cover shooting, picking up ladders. He doesn't do any extraordinarily cool things outside of cutscenes, one could say.
I find that the melee,
you know what I'm saying?
They really nailed that combat. It feels like he's struggling to get through those battles. He's taking people's heads and he's slamming them on, and it's tilting you all over. In terms of the gameplay being rough, I love the melee combat.
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that when you play as Joel, besides the melee, you don't feel overpowerful. You're not Samus with an arm cannon. You're just dude with a gun. Big Boss has that power, but I think that Joel is a more effective character because of his lack of strength, because of his convictions. Big Boss has those convictions, but Joel has way more to lose, and he starts the game losing the one thing that he cares about in the first place. And the fact that you can have that redemption arc, I think, speaks so much to what Naughty Dog could do with that character.
Kazi?
I 100% agree. Does anyone in the comments have a reason why Joel isn't utterly superior. You know,
but then again, I don't know Big Boss as well as Matt does. So
yeah,
you know,
Well, what about you, Matt? Yeah, that's a good point. How would Big Boss have an upper edge as a character?
I mean, Joel's bit is more interesting because he has to come from smaller means. He wasn't a soldier, you know. He was just a dad, and he's that avatar for us to like. How would we react in that kind of situation? And realistically, we would probably turn a little bit sour. I mean, I get pretty cynical, and I've lived in the first world, and I'm in my 30s. I have a pretty good life. I can imagine that Joel's going to get a lot more cynical. Yet you mostly agree with what he does, and you realize that's just how it is. Big Boss, yeah, he has it a lot easier, and the bad things that happen to him, his friends dying, for the most part, killing all these people, is just part of the job because that's the game. It's a campy game, but he really does go through. I mean, the big turn of him blindly following orders. Kojima has always, in the games before that, Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, really tried to say, why do we have war? What's the point of it? And he does so with an avatar that kills relentlessly. You know, sort of like Spec Ops: The Line in that way. And I think with Big Boss, and a little bit Metal Gear Solid 2 as well, but in a different way, Big Boss, he actually showed one character, instead of it being about conspiracy theories above the character, he brought it down to that personal level with Big Boss and said, following the rules this whole time, and he got nothing for it, and he had to kill his mentor that he loved, and the mentor is actually making a sacrifice in a way and let herself be killed to sacrifice for the greater good. But the trick of it at the end is that his mentor will not be remembered as a war hero for many of the countries. She'll be remembered as a war criminal, and that was her ultimate sacrifice. So in the end, that actually kind of makes Big Boss's boss, this woman, his mentor, almost more interesting than him. But how he deals with it is interesting. So even at Big Boss's biggest moments, the hugest moment goes to his mentor. So it's Joel.
Yeah. I think both characters have redemption storylines and storylines in which they're trying to... They're deeply emotional. And I think the point is that Big Boss usually has to stay because of duty. And the only thing keeping Joel is his conviction. His morality, you know. Mm-hmm. The world has gone to shit. He could have walked away.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
We got Ted Belcher thinking in the chat here that Joel is replaceable. What do you guys think about that?
No. If you swap Joel out for anything, it's the worst gameplay ever.
I think arguably you can. Here's the question though: is if we've used that before, that you can replace with someone like Leisure Suit or Samus, but I guess maybe that's the wrong way to approach it, because you can replace every character, but you're making them the same character. That's in everyone's mind. I think if you're thinking, oh, you can replace Joel, that means you're just going to take a character named Noel and make him a grieving father.
Grieving.
No.
Yeah.
Joel is the grieving father. And I think that's
it's a personification. We just attribute a name to the characteristics, essentially.
If you get rid of Joel, you have to get rid of the grieving father. You have to get rid of the guy who has all the conviction. You have to change him to like a Duke Nukem character, the exact opposite, and see how that works. I think Joel is replaceable in the way that you can change his race. You can maybe even change his gender. But you cannot change the reasons why he's there, the convictions he has, and the story itself and what he does for the story. Otherwise, it's not the same story.
Spot on. Yeah,
I think it's Joel. I mean, he's definitely, in this case, the characterization is the main thing. So if you swapped his physical appearance, in other games, the physical appearance can matter more, and his physical appearance as well matters some. He looks like an everyman that is in decent shape, and I think that's the most important part of it. A little past his prime, and even more so past his prime when the real game starts. But I think it's a sort of an allegory to what it is to be a parent. I'm not a parent, so I could be talking out of my ass here. Yeah. But you try as hard as you can, and you can't always save the ones that you love, and you can't even save yourself. But you just keep going forward, and you find something to believe in, and maybe that is... when you finish with that first stage of your life, when you have that child, that can be your next phase. Something to look look forward to and look after. And I think that Joel is so effective in that game. The game is nothing without him and, to a lesser extent, Ellie, who we lost on the last round. Joel beat her in the last round. So,
but yeah, there is no Last of Us without Joel.
Yeah.
But with Mario, you can make the argument that you can't replace him because Mario's mustache is just as iconic, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point of physical.
Sure, there's been a lot of great platformers. Mario's gameplay is obviously king, but there's something about Mario that I like spending time with. He's not too obnoxious. He's not too pointy. He's got like the color palette is perfect for him. He's warm. He's inviting. You want to hang out with him, but he's not too soft like Kirby.
Yeah.
He's not too esoteric like Yoshi.
Hey man, esoteric. Yoshi's just happy. He ain't esoteric. He's happy.
But I can't connect with him. He's a dinosaur, for God's sake.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do?
All right,
if
well,
you're gonna punch him, which it's canon. You actually punch Yoshi in Super Mario.
Yoshi
World.
learns to
Mario
duck.
is a dino beater.
Yep, there you go.
All right, well,
I don't know.
the winners of today: Super Mario beat out Ganon.
Yes.
Samus beat out Leisure Suit Larry. I know, crazy.
Sorry, Larry.
Joel beats Big Boss, and Cloud squeaks by Sephiroth for depth of character.
How about that Leisure Suit Larry versus Samus being the most heated argument when we had fucking Mario, excuse my French, Mario, we have Cloud, and we're like, no, it's about Leisure Suit Larry.
Leisure Suit Larry and Samus.
Well, but that just goes to show you just how deep characters can be if you just look at their games. Like Leisure Suit Larry, one could argue that it's maybe a smaller point and click adventure, and Samus is Metroid is one of the biggest franchises of all gaming. But when you look at the characters under a microscopic lens, they're maybe not so different after all, even when their motivations are so different. So it's an interesting dichotomy of characters, guys.
One last quick point Ted made. He's talking about Impact. Joel has only been on the PS3 and the PS4, and he can look at Big Boss in 4K on his PC.
Very true. Big Boss has been around since NES, so there is the staying power. But I argue that Big Boss wasn't even formulated that much. Like you said, Matt, Kojima was going to be done with 2. I think that Big Boss kind of starts and ends with 3, 4, and like that amount.
I mean, Metal Gear 1 and 2 as well. There's a big thing there where you think he's your he basically does what his mentor did to him. He is your mentor, and then he turns on you and he becomes the villain. So he's important back then as well. But I mean, that's like no one's going to go back and play those games.
But I could also argue that you have extra time that Joel is told in one story, and that
a short story too.
Yeah, it's not that long, like 10 hours. Big Boss has like 40, 50 plus hours to be fleshed out, and Kojima had time to write that character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Big Boss can beat a character from what I'd call the best visual novel, ever, the best interactive novel ever.
Yeah. Now we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens when Last of Us 2 comes out. They could bastardize Joel's character very quickly.
Totally, they could ruin it.
Well, I think,
and we'll see who has the most staying power. But obviously, when it comes to today's relevance, I think people are, they're frothing at the idea of.
There's a reason people freaked out about Last of Us.
Mm-hmm. And I think that what's his name? Druckmann said all the right things when he said we had looked at a lot of different ideas of what we could do with The Last of Us 2. None of them were good enough. We finally found one. They were ready to never do it. They weren't going to do it just because it's a hit, but on another one. And they finally found an idea that makes sense. And I like hearing that because that's what everybody else who's played that's thinking, do you need a sequel? Everything's already been told.
Exactly.
So we'll see what happens. All right, so next week we'll see who the winner is from Cloud, Joel, Samus, and Mario. That's it for us. We're out of here. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.